A British judge has ruled against Prince Harry and his appeal to reinstate security for himself and his family during visits to the UK.
Prince Harry is furious, and not just behind closed doors.
There's no point in continuing to fight anymore. Life is precious. I don't know. He won't speak to me because of this security stuff.
The monarchy is silent, but make no mistake, this is a coordinated move. His brand, his status, and everything he's built post-royal life are now hanging by a thread. Is this the final unraveling of the Sussex story? Prince Harry's ongoing legal battle over his personal security in the UK has once again pushed him into the public spotlight, and not necessarily in a way he may have hoped for. In a recent court ruling, Harry lost his appeal to have British police protection reinstated whenever he visits the country, a request he has been fighting for since stepping back from his royal duties in 2020. The core of his argument revolves around safety, his, Meghan's, and their children's. Harry has consistently said that his family faces unique threats due to their high profile and their relationship with the monarchy. In fact, in one of his early public statements after stepping down, he described this as a matter of life and death. According to Harry, the decision to pull back on his royal duties didn't mean his need for protection had disappeared. However, the British government and Royal and VIP Executive Committee, RAVEC, disagreed. They stated that once Harry was no longer a working royal, his entitlement to automatic police protection funded by the taxpayer was no longer valid. The committee argued that the rules must be applied consistently, and that it wouldn't be fair for someone no longer fulfilling royal duties to receive state-funded security, especially when many others in public life, including former politicians and celebrities, pay for their own protection. Harry's team pushed back, suggesting he should be allowed to personally fund police services during his visits to the UK, especially during official engagements or when representing charitable organizations. But that suggestion hit a wall as well. The court ruled that allowing wealthy individuals to buy access to public police resources could create a two-tier system and undermine the integrity of the UK's security system. What makes this issue more complex is that Harry isn't just requesting private security. He wants official police officers with intelligence briefings and legal authority, which private firms can't offer. In legal filings, his lawyers have argued that the risk to Harry and his family is ongoing and credible, and that the decision to strip him of police protection was both unfair and unsafe. For many observers, this legal drama touches on a deeper, more emotional layer. Harry's position within the royal family and how his choices have changed the dynamic. Stepping back from the royal fold was never going to be without consequences, and this battle over security has become a symbolic flashpoint. Critics, particularly on social media, have responded with skepticism or outright hostility. Some believe that Harry, who now lives in California and has signed multiple multi-million-dollar media deals, can more than afford his own security without turning to British taxpayers. Comments online have pointed out the perceived contradiction between wanting privacy and continuing to speak publicly about royal matters. Others have called attention to his travel schedule, noting recent trips to countries like Nigeria and Colombia, asking whether those destinations would offer more safety than a return to the UK. Former US President Donald Trump even weighed in, saying he disapproved of how Harry treated the late Queen Elizabeth and that he wouldn't receive any special treatment under a future Trump administration. Trump's tone reflected a broader sentiment shared by some political figures and commentators, that Harry and Meghan want to have it both ways, to step back from royal responsibility while holding on to royal privileges. Meanwhile, news outlets in the UK have increasingly framed this situation as an example of what happens when a royal steps outside the institution. While many people sympathize with Harry's desire to protect his family, they question whether the British taxpayer should bear any responsibility now that he no longer works on behalf of the Crown. Behind the headlines and legal arguments is a man who's clearly still feeling the effects of deep personal and institutional estrangement. Harry has said publicly that his father, King Charles, hasn't spoken to him for some time, and that their relationship has deteriorated significantly, in part due to the ongoing security row. In a recent interview, Harry referenced his father's health in vague but emotional terms, saying, "I don't know how much longer my father has," and pointing to security as one of the major reasons for the communication breakdown. This statement triggered further debate, not just about his relationship with the king, but also about whether such personal matters should be shared in the media. Some royal commentators suggested that Harry's comments, whether intentional or not, came across as manipulative. Talking publicly about the king's health, especially in such uncertain terms, was seen by some as inappropriate and hurtful to the rest of the family. At the same time, others have questioned whether Meghan has been a supportive partner through these legal and emotional struggles. While public appearances show the couple as united, rumors persist that Meghan is increasingly focused on her own career pursuits and may be less invested in the ongoing battle with the UK system. Of course, none of this is confirmed, but in the world of royal reporting, speculation spreads quickly and often fills the gaps left by silence. What's clear is that Harry's transition to life outside the royal system has not been smooth. His security concerns remain unresolved, his ties to his family appear frayed, and his position in the eyes of the British public is more polarized than ever. A recent UK poll showed that a majority of respondents do not support taxpayer-funded protection for the Duke of Sussex, suggesting that even if Harry sees himself as a target, many in the country no longer view him as their responsibility. There's also the broader issue of precedent. If the UK government allows Harry to pay for police protection, would that open the door for other high-profile individuals to make similar requests? Would that blur the line between public service and private privilege? These are the kinds of questions officials say they have to consider when making policy decisions, especially those involving public safety. In the meantime, Harry continues to press his case, and his legal team has suggested he may pursue further action. Whether or not he wins in court, the situation has already raised important questions about what it means to leave the royal family, and what remains after you've walked away. In many ways, the security debate has become about much more than just personal protection. It's a reflection of larger tensions between tradition and independence, between public duty and private choice, and between how royals are seen and how they see themselves. For Harry, it's not just about bodyguards and bulletproof cars. It's about identity, legacy, and where he fits in a system he was born into but no longer belongs to. In a surprising twist to the ongoing royal drama, a former girlfriend of Prince Harry has quietly entered the conversation, without rage, scandal, or dramatic accusations. What she shared wasn't explosive in a tabloid sense, but it was revealing in a way that caught people off guard. It wasn't loud, but it was intentional. And in the world of royal media, sometimes the quietest voices echo the loudest. The woman who dated Harry before his relationship with Meghan Markle began has largely stayed out of the public eye. Her time with Harry was private, rarely discussed in the press, and even more rarely by herself. That silence, long respected, was part of the unspoken rules surrounding royal romances, especially those that didn't end in marriage. But this time, something shifted. She decided to speak, and though she didn't name names or offer sensational anecdotes, her words have caused a noticeable ripple both in the press and, reportedly, within the royal institution itself. She spoke with a calm, measured tone. There was no bitterness, no blame, and no tabloid-style drama. Instead, she reflected on what it was like to be close to someone navigating life under intense pressure, suggesting that even in his pre-Meghan days, Harry was wrestling with some of the same emotional struggles that now define his public persona. Her words, though subtle, were full of subtext. She questioned the direction Harry has taken in recent years, suggesting that the version of him the public sees today is quite different from the man she once knew. This contrast between the private Harry of the past and the very public, media-savvy Harry of today has opened the door to renewed discussions about authenticity, influence, and personal transformation. She didn't say anything directly about Meghan Markle. In fact, Meghan's name didn't come up at all. But for many observers, that absence spoke volumes. In media analysis, sometimes what's left unsaid is as important as what's spoken aloud. Her silence around Meghan was interpreted by some as a deliberate choice, either as a way to avoid confrontation or perhaps as a quiet commentary of its own. What really caught people's attention was the timing. Her remarks came just as discussions in Parliament around Harry's royal titles were gaining momentum, and at a moment when his public image was already under pressure. That coincidence has led some to wonder whether her statement was simply personal or if it was part of a broader shift, one where people close to Harry, both inside and outside the royal institution, are beginning to speak up in ways they hadn't before. Whether she intended it or not, her words have become a kind of mirror, reflecting back not just on Harry, but on the entire royal system and the people watching from the sidelines. She praised Harry's warmth and charm, remembering the things that made him endearing. But she also expressed concern that he might be moving through life reacting to the past rather than facing it directly. That kind of insight, coming from someone who knew him intimately before the Netflix specials, memoirs, and media deals, carries weight. People online quickly picked up on the tone. Social media was flooded with theories, interpretations, and emotional responses. Some praised her for her restraint and maturity, saying her words felt authentic and grounded. Others accused her of being opportunistic or jealous, though those voices were fewer than expected. The general consensus, especially among longtime royal watchers, was that her comments added a new dimension to the public understanding of Harry's journey. What makes this different from previous critiques is the source. This wasn't a journalist, a palace aide, or a distant relative. This was someone who had real emotional history with Harry. And because she chose not to lash out or make accusations, her reflection came across as thoughtful rather than inflammatory. That alone made her comments stand out in an environment often filled with loud opinions and sensational headlines. Insiders familiar with how these kinds of interviews are handled said her approach felt intentional. While there's no hard proof of coordination, some royal analysts believe her decision to speak now was unlikely to be random. If anything, it fits into a growing pattern. More voices, both subtle and bold, are beginning to offer alternative views of Harry's story, views that don't always align with the one he's crafted in his public statements and projects. It's worth noting that the former girlfriend didn't say Harry was a bad person. In fact, she made a point to highlight his emotional depth and the pressures he faced even before the spotlight intensified. But she also seemed to suggest that Harry may be struggling to fully break free from the structures and expectations that once defined him. In her words, it wasn't so much criticism as it was concern. Concern for someone who appears to be caught between who he was, who he wants to be, and how the world sees him now. This idea, that Harry is still navigating between identities, hits at the heart of many debates surrounding his post-royal life. Is he truly independent of the monarchy, or has he simply repackaged his royal experience into a new kind of brand? Is he telling his story or selling it? These questions become even more complicated when someone from his past starts pointing out the contradictions, however gently. It's no secret that Harry has made controlling his narrative a top priority. From interviews with Oprah to his memoir Spare and multiple documentary-style projects, he has worked hard to tell his side of the story. In many ways, he has positioned himself as the outsider, the rebel prince who left the palace to pursue freedom and authenticity. But with this new voice from his past, the narrative faces a new challenge. What if the story the public has been told isn't the whole truth? There's also a growing conversation about motive, not necessarily hers, but what this means for Meghan and Harry's future. If voices from Harry's past are starting to speak, could this signal a broader shift in public tolerance for their version of events? Could the sympathy once granted to them be wearing thin, especially if others begin to offer contradictory perspectives? At this point, Meghan has made no public response. In fact, her silence in the wake of the interview has been notable. For someone known for speaking up and defending her story, her decision to stay quiet, at least for now, has sparked its own wave of speculation. Some see it as strategic silence. Others think it may reflect the seriousness of the moment. Either way, it adds another layer to the public's fascination with the couple. For many viewers, this moment feels like a turning point. Not necessarily a dramatic fall, but a shift, a quiet but meaningful one. When someone from your past, someone who once cared for you, speaks publicly and thoughtfully about your life choices, it hits differently. It feels less like criticism and more like a wake-up call. And perhaps that's the most powerful part of all. This wasn't a tabloid headline or a palace leak. It was a personal reflection that resonated across the world, not because of how it was said, but because of who said it and what she didn't say. In the end, her message was simple, but layered. Harry is not just a public figure. He's a person, one who may still be dealing with unresolved pain, difficult choices, and the pressure of maintaining a public identity built on deeply personal wounds. Whether you support him or not, that complexity is impossible to ignore. As the public digests her comments, attention is shifting. What does it mean for Harry's reputation that someone so close to him in the past has now raised quiet concerns? What will happen if others begin to speak up as well? Is this the start of a broader re-examination of his story, or just a singular moment of reflection? The legal and political mechanism under consideration is the Titles Deprivation Act of 1917. Originally introduced during World War I, it was designed to allow Parliament to remove titles from royals and nobles who were found to be acting against the interests of the United Kingdom, particularly those who sided with enemy nations. At the time, it was considered a measure of national security. Now, more than a century later, lawmakers are looking at the same legislation as a way to address what some are calling a symbolic betrayal. While this isn't about espionage or wartime treason, the core argument is focused on values. Supporters of the proposal say the monarchy represents more than heritage. It reflects a sense of national unity and duty. When a member of the royal family publicly distances themselves from that duty, criticizes the institution in global media, and continues to profit from the royal connection, it raises questions about fairness and legitimacy. In recent parliamentary discussions, several members of both the House of Commons and the House of Lords expressed concern that the ongoing use of royal titles by Harry and Meghan sends the wrong message. They argue that it allows the couple to benefit from the prestige of the institution while seemingly undermining it. Some MPs have even gone as far as to label this title laundering, a way to leverage the Crown's influence without being accountable to it. What's triggered this new level of seriousness is not just public frustration, but tangible political action. A petition, launched quietly by concerned citizens, has quickly gained traction. With tens of thousands of signatures, it has sparked formal debates and motions within Parliament. What began as a digital outcry from royal watchers and concerned taxpayers has now become a legislative conversation. The petition is focused on the idea that if someone no longer serves the monarchy, publicly criticizes it, and resides permanently abroad, they should no longer use titles that suggest official standing. For many people, especially within Harry's former dukedom of Sussex, this isn't about punishing him. It's about accountability. One elderly woman from the region summed up the mood in a local interview by saying, "He doesn't represent us anymore. He represents himself." This simple statement reflects a broader sentiment that has been building over time. Public perception of Harry and Meghan has shifted significantly since they first stepped back from royal duties in 2020. What was initially described as a modern love story of independence and self-expression has, in some eyes, turned into something else, a commercial operation built on royal branding. From their Netflix documentary series and high-profile interviews to Harry's memoir and various speaking engagements, the couple has consistently used their titles in promotional materials and official communications. While they technically agreed not to use His or Her Royal Highness in formal capacities, they still retain the Duke and Duchess of Sussex titles, which carry significant symbolic and financial value. This continued use of royal branding is now under serious scrutiny. Some MPs argue that the couple's actions have caused reputational harm to the monarchy, and that allowing them to keep their titles while operating as private citizens, engaged in media ventures and political advocacy, sets a dangerous precedent. What complicates matters further is the role of the monarchy itself. Unlike political offices, royal titles are not earned through elections or job applications. They are inherited, granted, and deeply rooted in tradition. Stripping someone of such a title is not just a legal action, it's a symbolic one. It sends a message about who is considered part of the royal fabric and who is not. Interestingly, Buckingham Palace has remained silent throughout this debate. There have been no public statements from King Charles or Prince William. However, royal insiders have suggested that this silence is strategic. By allowing Parliament to take the lead, the royal family avoids the appearance of internal conflict. It separates personal relationships from constitutional consequences, at least in public. According to sources close to the palace, King Charles is unlikely to interfere. Those familiar with his approach say he sees value in allowing institutions to protect themselves, especially when the monarchy is under criticism for being outdated or out of touch. His silence may not mean disinterest. It may be a carefully considered move to maintain dignity and avoid being seen as vindictive toward his own son. Prince William's position is also being closely watched. While he has not made any official comment, reports suggest he has grown increasingly frustrated with Harry and Meghan's media activity. Some insiders claim William views his brother's actions as a betrayal, not just of the family, but of the institution their late grandmother worked so hard to preserve. One source described William's stance as quiet but firm, saying that while he will never speak out against his brother publicly, he also won't stand in the way if Parliament decides to take action. For the public, this parliamentary process has opened up a different kind of conversation. It's no longer just about personal drama or who said what in an interview. It's about what royal titles mean in today's society, and whether they should be protected, limited, or removed when misused. It's also about consistency. If the monarchy is to maintain relevance, supporters argue, it must be seen as having clear boundaries and consequences, even for its most famous members. There's also a commercial angle to this story that can't be ignored. Industry experts have noted that Harry and Meghan's deals with Netflix, Spotify, and publishing houses were based in large part on their status as royal figures. Their brand has always been more than celebrity. It's carried the weight of royalty. Stripping the titles would not just be a symbolic blow. It could lead to a very real loss of value in future media and business deals. This has already caused quiet concern within the entertainment industry. According to anonymous sources from Hollywood talent agencies and production companies, there's growing uncertainty about the couple's long-term viability as media figures if they lose their royal status. One executive was quoted as saying, "Without the titles, they're just another celebrity couple. The mystique fades." At the same time, some believe that losing the titles could actually give Harry and Meghan more freedom. Without royal constraints, they could rebrand themselves entirely, focusing on activism, philanthropy, or other ventures without being tied to an institution they've openly criticized. However, that rebrand would come with risk. It's not clear whether the public would still be as interested or whether the media industry would still offer the same level of opportunity. The debate in Parliament is ongoing, and while it may take time to reach a conclusion, the momentum is undeniable. What once seemed impossible, removing royal titles from a prince by act of government, is now a very real possibility. Whether or not the Titles Deprivation Act is ultimately invoked, the discussion itself marks a significant moment in British constitutional history. For Harry, the outcome could represent a defining point in his post-royal journey. If the titles are removed, he will officially be Mr. Harry Windsor, a private citizen with no formal role in the monarchy. That shift would bring clarity, but also consequences: legal, financial, and reputational. This silence isn't accidental. In fact, royal experts say it's a deliberate strategy. Instead of directly confronting Harry, the royal family appears to be letting the system speak for them. By allowing Parliament to consider legal mechanisms like the Titles Deprivation Act of 1917, the monarchy avoids any appearance of personal revenge. It keeps the royal household above the fray while letting public institutions enforce consequences. According to those close to the palace, this approach serves multiple purposes. For King Charles, it allows him to preserve the image of a father who remains neutral and dignified, especially after the turbulent fallout from Harry and Meghan's interviews and memoir. Charles is known for his preference for quiet diplomacy over public confrontation. He reportedly feels that if the monarchy is to survive in the modern era, it must act with restraint and uphold its image of stability, no matter the provocation. But behind the scenes, sources suggest the king is far from indifferent. He is said to be deeply hurt by Harry's public statements, particularly those that touch on family loyalty and internal struggles. The release of Harry's memoir, the high-profile Netflix documentary, and the repeated allegations made in interviews have reportedly left Charles feeling betrayed, not just as a monarch, but as a father. What makes this moment especially significant is that it's not just about Harry anymore. It's about the institution as a whole. The public, Parliament, and even parts of the media are treating this situation as a litmus test for the monarchy's ability to maintain boundaries and enforce accountability. If the royal family allows titles to be used freely by individuals who have stepped away from duty and repeatedly criticized the crown, then what does a royal title truly represent? Prince William's role in all of this is equally important. While he, too, has remained silent publicly, multiple insiders suggest he has made his position clear in private. He reportedly does not oppose Parliament's actions and is not expected to stand in the way if titles are revoked. This, from a future king, is a powerful signal. For William, the issue is about more than family. It's about the monarchy's future. Those familiar with his thinking say he views Harry's actions over the past few years, particularly the public criticism and commercial ventures, as a direct threat to the credibility of the royal family. William is believed to feel that his brother has tried to benefit from royal status while abandoning the responsibilities that come with it. One palace insider described William's stance as cold but calculated. He has always been known for his discipline and ability to stay composed under pressure. While Harry has chosen to go public with his grievances, William has remained tight-lipped, sticking to the royal code of silence. But silence, in this context, doesn't mean passivity. According to sources, William's lack of opposition to the title review is effectively a green light. It sends a clear message: the institution comes first. What makes this dynamic so striking is how far the relationship between the two brothers has fallen. Just a few years ago, they were seen as close, joint heirs to the legacy of Princess Diana, working together on mental health initiatives and royal tours. But today, that partnership appears to be broken. William's refusal to publicly defend Harry or oppose the legal review of his titles suggests a deep, possibly irreversible rift. And then there's Meghan Markle. While she has not spoken publicly about the parliamentary debates, a small moment involving a gift basket sparked a new wave of controversy. Meghan reportedly sent a basket of goods to a podcast host, complete with a handwritten note. The card was signed using her former title, Her Royal Highness, the Duchess of Sussex. The use of HRH caught immediate attention. Under the terms agreed when Harry and Meghan stepped back from royal duties, they were instructed not to use their HRH styles in any official capacity. That condition was put in place by Queen Elizabeth II herself, and for many in royal circles, it was considered a red line. So when the HRH title appeared on the card, critics saw it as a violation of that agreement. Some viewed it as a calculated move, an attempt to maintain royal prestige even as political and public pressure mounted. Others gave Meghan the benefit of the doubt, suggesting it may have been an oversight or a formality. Either way, the moment added fuel to the fire. It became another example for those arguing that the couple continues to use royal branding despite stepping away from royal responsibilities. Within Parliament, that small act was not ignored. It reignited conversations around title misuse and the broader implications for how royal status is perceived and maintained. Lawmakers are not just debating legal technicalities, they're asking whether the monarchy itself can afford to remain silent while its symbols are potentially exploited. At the heart of all of this is a single question: what does it mean to be royal? Is it a role, a title, a brand, or a duty? And when someone walks away from the job, should they be allowed to keep the name. For Harry and Meghan, the risk is clear. If the titles are officially removed, their identity as royals, at least in the public and legal sense, comes to an end. That change could affect everything from how they're introduced at public events to how they're marketed in business deals. Their entire brand has been built around a unique duality: private individuals with public royal heritage. If that balance is lost, the couple may need to completely rethink their public image. Industry insiders have already begun to speculate on what this could mean for future partnerships. One talent agent in Los Angeles was quoted as saying, "If they lose the titles, it changes how they're perceived. It changes what they can charge. It changes what they're selling." While Harry and Meghan have undeniable global recognition, much of their market value is still linked to the mystique of royalty. Stripping the titles wouldn't just be symbolic, it could shift their entire platform. From book deals and speaking engagements to documentary productions, the royal connection is often the unspoken foundation. Without it, they would still be famous, but in a different way. No longer royal figures, but celebrities with a past. Some believe that this shift might ultimately be liberating. It could allow Harry and Meghan to move beyond the royal shadow and build something completely independent. Others believe it would mark the end of the era that gave their voices international relevance. Without the titles, they risk becoming part of the celebrity cycle they once tried to rise above. For the monarchy, however, the decision represents a moment of clarity. If Parliament votes to strip the titles, it will show that even those born into the system are not above its rules. It would reinforce the idea that royalty is a duty, not a lifelong entitlement. And it would send a clear message: if you walk away from the institution, you walk away from everything it represents. And so, the stage is set. A decision that once seemed unthinkable is now very much on the table. The debate has moved from gossip columns to government chambers. The public has had its say. The monarchy has made its stance clear without saying a word. For Prince Harry, the consequences could be life-changing. For Meghan, the impact could be just as significant. And for the royal family, this may be a turning point, a moment when it draws a firm line in the sand.